cast. It's going to be kind of interesting, I think.
Oh, yeah. And, the guy who played Freddy Krueger said he has one more Freddy Krueger left in him, and he would love to play Freddy Krueger again.
Yeah, he said he wanted to do it one more time, I believe. And he did it one more time, actually, in a show called The Goldbergs. They had a Halloween episode. He played Freddy in that, and I think he has one more left in him after that.
Yeah, he played that so well.
But he says he also wants Kevin Bacon to take up the role.
I don't know. I'm still waiting to see what Kevin Bacon is going to do with his film career. It's kind of like it's all over the place right now, what he's been doing.
Right. I personally would love to see him as Freddy Krueger. Would personally love to see it.
Do you think he would make a good Freddy Krueger?
I do. I think he'd actually make an excellent Freddy Krueger.
Interesting. I just never thought of that of Kevin Bacon. I thought of him as like FBI agents or all this other stuff, experimenting with death and all that stuff, but never as a Freddy Krueger.
I think he could do it. I think it'd be something interesting.
Ah, interesting. Well, what other good movies can we talk about?
Let's see, I've been doing a couple of horror movies a day, like I said, to start October out right. And I'm going back through a lot of the classics just to get started, like the Return of the Living Dead, things like that. I started with Return of the Living Dead the other day. And then I went and I watched the Child's Play remake again, of course. And I'm just kind of going with that. And I could give a top 10 pretty easy of movies you should watch during Halloween, but those are just my opinions.
Well, what are they?
Top 10 list of Halloween movies that I could think of would be the original Friday the 13th, of course. And then I would go as far as to say Friday the 13th Part 7, Terrifier, Evil Dead 2, then I would say probably Saw, and then I would say Saw 2 and 3 just to get past the sequel thing, but then I just kind of cut it off there, because the more Saw movies they seem to make, the more they seem to veer off course.
I think so.
And then I would, then I'd suggest probably Hellraiser, Terrifier, obviously the original Stephen King's It, the one with Tim Curry, and just some classic movies to get started. Maybe the original Child's Play, just anything that you could find synonymous with Halloween. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, the original Halloween and Halloween 2.
Yeah, the Chainsaw the original one was really gory.
Yep, and it's still to this day it holds up pretty good to be a movie from the 70s. I mean, it really does hold up.
Well, I tell you, I made the mistake. Me and my friend went to the drive-in movie with our dates, and we really didn't care about what the movie was going to be, but it turned out to be, the Chainsaw Massacre. I tell you, I have never seen girls, including myself, actually scream when that movie was so far ahead of its time, especially back with in the 70s, early 70s, and you saw all that stuff. It just scared you.
And it really was. And I remember seeing that movie when I was very young, probably about 6 or 7 years old. I kind of snuck into the room while my dad was watching it, and he'd kind of fallen asleep. So I just kind of sat there mesmerized by it for a few minutes. But honestly, I had some trouble sleeping there for the next couple of weeks.
Well, especially if anybody, started a chainsaw in their neighborhood or anything. Right? It would sound like it. It would be enough to scare you and go underneath your bed, I would think.
Absolutely. And that was one of my, being exposed to horror, that was one of my first times. The absolute first time was Jaws. Or not Jaws, Jaws 3.
I could never get into Jaws for some reason. To me, my wife really liked the Jaws movies when they came out, and I'd watch it. We went out to the theater and saw it, and I put it this way, I could almost fall asleep. To me, it just wasn't scary enough. But, maybe I'm just not in that type of movies.
Well, I mean, the shark genre is not for everybody. The Sci-Fi Channel loves it.
Yeah, they love it to the point where they could kill you with it. I mean,
yep.
They taken it to the new level of stupidity. That's my honest opinion.
And we do. We have house sharks, ghost sharks, zombie sharks, sharks in tornadoes. I mean, there's all different manners, of sharks. Jersey Shore shark attack, two-headed shark. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And sci-fi really has done some fun things with the shark genre, but they've really done some things that are really cheesy too.
I think so. Have you noticed, or is it my imagination, the Sci-Fi Channel in the last couple of years is not the Sci-Fi Channel that I remember years ago?
No, the Sci-Fi Channel I remember years ago was Doctor Who, Star Trek, The Twilight Zone, just anything related to that kind of thing. They would show Star Wars films, Space, 1999, Lost in Space, things like that.
But they also...
And now it's more about cheesy horror films or series that really have nothing to do with sci-fi, or they talk about video games or things of that nature, and it's not really sci-fi related anymore.
I've noticed that, and it's happening, or they're putting cartoons on prime time, and you're sitting there, well, if I want to watch a cartoon, I'm going to go to, the cable channel and watch, Looney Tunes or something. You look at this stuff, I don't know, maybe is that what a lot of the population is going to, or maybe it's because, maybe they don't have the budget they used to have because people aren't watching it. I used to know, Nick, a lady who owned a sandwich shop. And, they put a McDonald's in down the street about a mile away. And all of a sudden, her business started dropping off. So she raised her prices up. And she was happy for a week or two because she made up for lost revenue. But then all of a sudden, more people would stop coming in there because they were going to McDonald's. So then she raised her prices up again, and she did that 2-3 times till she had no more, customers, and she was out of business. And I hate to say it, that's what's happening with some of these cable channels. They're putting on crap, and they're not putting on, when you think a sci-fi channel, it should be, sci-fi, scary movies, space movies, and all this type of stuff, not what some of the stuff they're putting on.
Right. And it's odd that with the Sci-Fi Channel, sometimes you have just kind of sci-fi news shows, but they still don't really have anything to do with science fiction.
No.
They'll show maybe a snippet or a clip from Comic-Con or something like that. And, I mean, Comic-Con does have its science fiction genre, don't get me wrong, but it's still not a science fiction film.
Yeah, you're right. I found, and I can't even think of the channel right now, but the other day, I know where it's at on my remote to get to it. I found a channel that shows, the scary type movies, but they, the original Thing, for example, and a whole bunch of, some all the way up to like probably the 90s of scary movies. And every night they show like 2 or 3 of them, and it's so good to see them because you don't find them anywhere else anymore.
Right, and there's been channels created for that. I mean, there's a satellite channel called Chiller that started a while back, and they show horror films constantly. Shudder, which is, I guess it's a pay-for app kind of service, and it's just an app you could get on your phone, your tablet, something like that, or your TV, and it shows horror films quite often. They're actually resurrected Creepshow and put it on Shudder. And I've been hearing nothing but good things about that, but I haven't got to watch it yet.
Interesting. What was that other one you called, was it Chill, or what was it called?
Chiller.
Chiller. I got to write that down because I want to check that out because, I grew up on sci-fi and, thriller type of scary movies. And like I said, it's getting to the point you don't see them. And it's hard to find.
Right. And some of my favorite horror movies are horror movies I watched when I was young. Like The Abominable Dr. Phibes, like with Vincent Price, things like that. And you just don't see those now.
No, occasionally you'll see some Vincent Price ones, but it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. On like Comet. Okay, even Comet. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They show sci-fi movies. Like about 20 hours out of the day, but they started out showing a lot of Vincent Price, a lot of space scary movies and monsters, and Resident Evil and all that stuff. But then all of a sudden that started changing. And I don't know if it's because they don't have the viewership. And then they start putting on other stuff that, who wants to watch, I hate to say it, Stargate over and over 7, nights a week. I mean, if I'm going to go watch Stargate, I'm going to find a channel where Stargate is on. But I want to go see scary movies, and it's, again, I'm going to check out Chiller.
Right. Chiller's worth it. I mean, there's a couple different apps right now that have some good stuff going for Halloween, like Hulu. Hulu's got their Halloween section, and it's got a lot of indie films. It's got quite a few classic horror movies. It's got some newer stuff. Netflix has got a scary movie section right now for Halloween. So, I mean, there's a lot of these apps and channels that are doing that for the holiday. But the problem is, after the holiday, some of those movies end up going away or they take them down, things like that.
Yeah, their history. That's the bad part.
Right.
Well, TV, too. Have you noticed even the cable channels, the bigger ones, like AMC and all these other ones, they do have certain shows. I like The Preacher. I can't get into the zombie shows anymore because, like I said earlier, they just don't have much plots to them anymore, which it's a shame because they could, if they sat there, and I think what the producers and the writers need to go watch, like the Night of the Living Dead and some of these other shows and get re-energized.
Right. They need to just have a sit down one day and watch about 15 George Romero movies, or not even George Romero movies, like 28 Days Later, I Am Legend, things like that show zombies or versions of zombies.
Well, isn't the 28 Days Later, that was the one that was filmed in the UK, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, they had at least an ending to it, okay, which was really made logical sense. The zombies, after they couldn't eat people anymore, they after 28 days they started dying off because they died from no food. It makes logical sense. That's the zombies of the shows that you watch now. I mean, they're coming out of the lakes. That they've been in the lakes for who knows how long. I mean, they don't seem to die off unless you stab them in the head or shoot them in the head. But they don't die from not eating, which doesn't make logical sense.
Right. Well, I mean, the original concept of the zombie was it was already dead. So if it ate or not, I mean, it wouldn't really matter.
Well, these zombies, though, still have a certain amount of fluid in them, and they if they still have the desire to eat, and they have kind of supposedly a little bit of a brain stem left of not much. If you think about the original zombie movies, that like again the 28 days, they put a ending to it, which made sense. And right. I think even the Walking Dead would have done that, even if it had an ending, 12, 13 years later, or 20 years if we get stuck, where they, because 12 years could actually be 28 days in one of these shows, where right. they would slowly die off and give mankind some type of future.
Well, at the rate a zombie would decompose anyway, you could probably hide in a bunker for about 6 weeks and the zombie apocalypse would be over.
The Stepan